KNRS News brought to you by the Lancer Automotive Group. I'm Abby Bonnell, it's 6:03. A woman found dead inside her Salt Lake City home after deputies pulled over a 26-year-old man driving her truck in Millard County. Officers searched the Rose Park home and found the body of 39-year-old Shalise Geeta. Police now arresting Mustafa Aldoma. They don't know if the two knew one another.
He's been up here as a transient. A lot of his address history shows back to the shelter area.
Salt Lake City Police Detective Richard Chipping, the suspect, has been booked into jail on suspicion of murder. SWAT called to a Bountiful home near 2700 South Orchard Drive late this afternoon on reports of a fight involving several people. Two of the suspects were wanted on felony charges. Those suspects were taken into custody. A nearby elementary school was briefly placed on a lockout as a precaution. State lawmakers facing a busy legislative session. Education, air quality, Medicaid expansion, just some of the hot topics. Another one, medical marijuana.
We're going to have to look at it. It's going to get a lot of attention, but I love moving the needle, and I worry that this issue is going to have a bigger footprint in terms of its political capital spend or attention than it does in really impacting everyday Utahns' lives.
House Speaker Greg Hughes appearing on Rod Show tonight. KNRS News at the top and bottom of the hour. Anytime at KNRS.com.
The shootout at the OK Corral.
Women's rights on gay rights.
Here's the world we live in. And I apologize to nobody.
And with leadership, we can do it again.
Election HQ, the fight for the White House and control of Congress. A weekly conversation about the 2016 election. Joining Rod to analyze the major stories of the week is former Chief of Staff for Senator Mike Lee and now political strategist Boyd Matheson.
All right, welcome back to hour number 3 of the Rod Arquette Show. Boyd is on the line with us now. Boyd, I'm laughing because I remember last week, the first question I asked you was, can this campaign get any weirder than this? And there's a new chapter being written on this thing tonight.
As I told someone this morning, we've hit a new high in lows for campaigns.
I'm watching Donald. He's on with Bill O'Reilly right now, trying to explain why he's not involved in all of this debate. What do you make of this, Boyd?
It's a perfect play for someone like Donald Trump. We do all have to recognize he is a force in this campaign, but it's also important to realize that he's really a farce in this campaign. The move that he just did is really the epitome of his entire strategy, and it is to just play the media and really play the voters by default. So here he's able to grab headlines, get attention, and he doesn't have to go and answer any hard questions about the specifics of his policies. And he hasn't done that to date. He's not going to do that in the future. And so this is just one more chapter of how far the Donald is willing to go to fleece the American people.
But is it wrong for a candidate just to say, I don't want to participate in this debate, I'm going to do something else? Is that wrong?
I don't. I guess there's always there has to be a scenario where it probably is okay to bow out of a debate, but I don't think there's anything in this setting that would do that other than for Donald Trump to prove that he is once again above everybody, that he's different. That he doesn't have to play by the same set of rules. I mean, can you imagine a Ronald Reagan just saying, I'm not going to show up because I don't like the moderator?
Yeah.
Can you imagine a Kennedy-Nixon debate where Kennedy just walks off the stage because, so-and-so is going to moderate it? It's just not the American way. It's about having dialogue, and it shouldn't matter who the moderator is. It should be about talking about the principles and policies, and he's just not up for that.
Is this his way of showing his supporters, Boyd, that nobody is going to tell him what to do? Again, the media cannot control him. He can control the media, and I think that's what he's doing today.
He's thumbing his nose at the process. He's thumbing his nose at the media, and he's showing what kind of power player he is. And I think that's an important thing for the American people to stop and think about. Here we have someone who clearly thinks he is above the rules of the game, and having somebody with that kind of mindset sitting in the Oval Office should give everyone a little bit of pause before they pull the lever.
What do you think this past week? A lot of the narrative in the news media this past week, Boyd, was this for lack of a better term, the civil war going on within the Republican Party, where you've got some of the establishment now saying they'd prefer Donald Trump over Ted Cruz, and all this is going on. How serious is this civil war, if there is such a thing, within the Republican Party right now?
Well, there's definitely a split, and there's always that natural tension between the grassroots, the base of a party, and the establishment. This year, it's just bigger, and it just needs to be filled with real substance and real policy. And it's interesting. You've seen even some very interesting plays. You have Senator Ben Sass, freshman from Nebraska, who's actually in Iowa, and he is going around not for one candidate, but for several candidates. I interacted with him earlier today, and he said, I'm doing this because my job as senator is to protect the Constitution. And so he's out there doing that. Anyone who is saying that Donald Trump would be better than any of the other candidates that remain, you've got to really question that, because that is so beyond the pale of what our republic is about and what our party should be about. Mm-hmm. I mean, Donald Trump, let's be honest, he is a bigot, he is a bully, and for anyone to think that that's a better option, that causes me to be very suspicious about people who are saying things like that, because I think what they're saying is, I'm better off, my power base is better off because I think I can, I can interact and work with Donald Trump versus what's really best for the country.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What do you make of his comments about, he can work with Nancy Pelosi, he can work with Harry Reid, even though Harry's not going to be there next year. But this idea, I mean, how does that sit with people within the Republican Party, do you feel?
It's an interesting play. He's obviously playing to a group that has really been neglected by both parties. And so there's nobody to blame but the establishment of both parties that Donald Trump even exists at this point in the program. And so him saying that, I think he's just proving that he is just above everything and beyond everyone in terms of what he can do. And he doesn't really care if that offends a few people here or a few people there. He thinks he'll make up for it in the middle.
What do you see happening tomorrow night if, in fact, Trump doesn't show up? And I'd be surprised if he does now. But if it's just up to the other candidates, is this a real opportunity for them tomorrow night?
It is an incredible opportunity. And as you know, I hate waste. and wasted opportunities drive me bananas. And if the other candidates get on stage tomorrow night and they spend the hour and a half or 2 hours going at each other, or even going at Donald for not being there, that is the biggest waste of an opportunity any of them will ever have in this entire election process. This is an opportunity, minus Donald Trump, to actually have a serious debate and a serious discussion about principles and about policies. And if they waste a moment attacking each other, they've really missed the window and the opportunity. They need to get out there and make the case. This is what I am for, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm a serious candidate, and this is what I'm going to do, and how it relates to you. And there's some really interesting plays, I think, that we'll see between Rubio has some very interesting opportunities, and I think Ted Cruz has some interesting opportunities tomorrow night. I think Rubio gets an opportunity to really show his presidential side without having to be on the attack or worry so much about being attacked, although I think he'll get some from some of the lower level folks. And Cruz, I think, has an extraordinary opportunity to be likable, to show that he can not only talk. Sometimes when he answers a question, you think he's talking to a Supreme Court justice, rather than an everyday citizen. So for Ted Cruz, I think the key tomorrow is talk to the jury, not the judge. Talk to the people and show your likable side, and show what it is that you're going to do and defend, and how that's going to help real people and real working class people. Rubio has a unique opportunity, I think, to rise above everyone else and really flash a little bit of Kennedy and Reagan and instill some confidence in people in terms of how he would lead and how he would stack up in the fall against Hillary.
Boyd, in the few minutes that we have left, you shared with me prior to our conversation today a op-ed piece that you wrote concerning some questions that voters should ask themselves when they're considering a candidate. I thought they were excellent questions. Review those briefly and why you think they're so important to be asked.
You bet. So one of the questions is, how is realizing that a lot of us are never going to get to sit across the table from any of these candidates and ask them our questions. And I actually believe the more important thing is that we sit down with ourselves and answer a few questions. So one would be, how is this candidate positioned to show real courage? Is this someone who is just all about getting this office and getting this power? Because if they are, every decision they make is going to be based on holding on to that power or extending that power. And you can't show courage if you're in that frame of mind. Is this person willing to be a one-termer as president? Would they be willing to just serve one term as president if that's what it took to do the right thing or to fight for the right principle or the right set of policies? Courage is not a real common thing in Washington these days. Everything is kind of poll approved and consultant certified, and I think it's a disservice to us. Another really important question, I think, as you listen tomorrow, is when you listen to this candidate, where does it lead your thoughts? Is it all about the candidate, or do you find yourself, thinking about your life and your future, your hopes and dreams? Mm-hmm. Does the candidate stir in you anger and angst and angry emotions, or does it lead you towards, hey, I think we can do that, some positive, hopeful direction? As I've mentioned before, I think we all know what these candidates are against. They're against Hillary, they're against the liberal left, and they're against each other. So don't waste any time on that. Focus on what you're for. Tell me what you're for. And if you can't identify that in a candidate, you've got some problems. Another one real quick, Rod, that I think is really important. Listen closely tomorrow. Does the candidate talk about things in generalities, or do they talk about them in the specific? And this won't be quite as prevalent because Donald Trump won't be there. He's the master. He's the master of huge, awesome, make your head spin, but very general answers. Yeah, and that's a good way to test the mettle of a candidate. Is do they talk about specifics, or they just kind of give us these bumper sticker, one-liners that their consultants have come up with? So those are just a few of the things that I think are really important for people to look at as they go into the debate tomorrow night.
Well, some great ideas, Boyd, and as always, just great chatting with you. We'll talk to you next week. It'll be fun to watch that debate tomorrow night, see what happens, huh?
It's going to be a good one, and it should have a pretty interesting impact on what happens next week in Iowa. We'll talk about that next week and see how things move on as we march towards New Hampshire from there.
All right, boy. Hey, have a good one, man. Talk to you next week.
Thanks, Rod. Do the best. Talk to you soon.
All right, that's Boyd Matheson, former Chief of Staff for Utah Senator Mike Lee, and now a political strategist, joining us every week at this time on the fight for the White House and control of Congress. More coming up on the Rod Arquette Show. Right now, let's get a news update in the News Center. Here's Andy.
Thanks, Rod.